The Values Network is a nonprofit organization. We're only able to produce events like this evening's discussion through the generous support of donors. Now it is my honor and privilege to introduce tonight's esteemed guest. Michael Steinhardt is a legendary money manager turned philanthropist. In 1995, he stunned the financial world by announcing that he would close his lucrative hedge fund to devote his time, fortune, and energy to Jewish causes. Mr. Steinhardt was the co-founder of Birthright Israel and continues to be a major supporter today. Congressman Eric Cantor represents Virginia's 7th District and has served in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2001. In 2010, Eric was elected by his colleagues in the House to serve as Majority Leader of the 112th Congress, the highest position ever held by a Jewish legislator. Eric has earned a reputation in Congress as a strategic thinker, an ideas-driven conservative, and a great friend to Israel. Tonight's moderator, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, is also the founder of This World, the Values Network, and the Global Institute for Values Education. Shmuley hosted the award-winning national television show Shalom in the Home on TLC and is a frequent guest on major news programs. He is an internationally published columnist and best-selling author of 26 books, including his most recent work, 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Yourself. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to turn the program over to Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike Fromm, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a treat because joining me on this panel are two Jewish individuals who have distinguished themselves at the forefront of global achievement. On my left, Michael Steinhardt is the world's best-known Jewish philanthropist and the founder of the most successful Jewish educational initiative of modern times. Michael's name is synonymous with generosity and philanthropy at every level, primarily in the Jewish community, but of course not limited to the Jewish community, and it's a great honor for him to join us this evening. Thank you very much, Michael. And never in the history of American government has any Jewish individual risen as high as the gentleman sitting to my right. Congressman Eric Cantor of Virginia is the House Majority Leader. He is a man celebrated for his vision, leadership, integrity, and his capacity to get things done in galvanizing a party to follow a unified vision. He has become one of the most influential people in the country with his core beliefs that people should be self-motivated and that government is there to create opportunities for entrepreneurship and for capital investment. I salute Eric's unfailing dedication to his American patriotism, his Jewish identity, and his commitment to the State of Israel. He is by far the greatest friend the State of Israel has ever had in the United States Congress, and he is a prince of the Jewish people and the community, and we welcome him here tonight. It is our honor to host him. My purpose this evening is to have an honest conversation of the state of the nation's values, whether some of the decline we're seeing in economic productivity in other areas is due to a decline in values, and whether universal Jewish values can play a role in healing America. So we're going to begin immediately, and I'm going to turn to Michael Steinhardt. Michael, one of the principal Jewish values that we articulate in prayers, such as prayers yesterday, which I mentioned at your home this morning, is self-sufficiency. The high priest goes into the Holy of Holies, a holy sanctuary, on Yom Kippur, the day that we all fasted on yesterday, and he offers a prayer on behalf of the people that no man should ever be dependent on another for his daily bread, because beyond food, clothing, and shelter, we all seek dignity in life. Yet, there's also the other side of Jewish values, which is that we have to care for the needy, the destitute, the homeless, the naked, the blind, the widow. Now, with the population of this country so deeply divided as to what the economic future ought to be, large government that provides more and taxes us higher, or lower government, a smaller government that does not raise taxes, thereby creating more entrepreneurship, more jobs, etc. how do you balance these two seemingly conflicting values as both a capitalist entrepreneur and a renowned philanthropist?
Well, this issue has become a salient issue today because the fact is that over the last 30 years or so, the rich have gotten richer and the poor have gotten poorer. And you can't avoid that being a major fact in American life. And somehow, healthy societies do not endure when that continues without an adjustment. And this has now continued for a long period of time, and the policies of the last 10 or 20 years have done very little to solve that. And it's a real issue. How it relates to Jewish values, I'm frankly not sure. And the Republican side of the ledger, as it were, I am quite confident is in a process of deep introspection as to how it can resolve this issue of greater inequality in a way that's consistent with its values. And it's much more difficult for the Republicans to do it because liberal Democrats have always been much more egalitarian and much more sympathetic to an approach to life which minimizes differences and is progressive in its very essence. But that progressivity has typically been anathema to the best methodology for growth. So here we are, stuck with this same issue that in other times, other societies have been charged with, and we are yet to figure out what we're going to do about it now. How it relates to Jewish values, I'm not so sure, because I think sometimes we use the term Jewish values when we really mean religious values. And I would define Jewish values rather narrowly. And I'm not sure Jewish values, as I see them, easily relate to what you're talking about here, Shmuley.
Well, but Michael, you told me once that one of the reasons you decided to close your hedge fund when it was one of the most successful in the world, and you're one of the three inventors of the hedge fund, and go into philanthropy, is that you feared it would say on your tombstone, money manager. You wanted it to be something more than that. There's a whole anti-Wall Street movement going on. Does that mean you concur?
Well, I did that because somehow I grew up in an environment that was a lower middle class environment in Brooklyn, surrounded by people of the left. And I don't think some parts of me have ever disappeared. I've ever changed that. So that after I'd made a great deal of money, more money than I knew what to do with, somehow in my scale of values, using this word values, I'd always felt there was something of greater nobility, of greater virtue than making money. So when I made more money than I knew what to do with, I knew I wanted to do something different would be. I wasn't sure, but I knew I wanted to do something that I felt had a sense of nobility, something that would be a greater blessing than making money for me and other rich people, which is essentially what I did in my career. And that's why I retired at a very early age, trying to find that magic, that nobility, if you will. And ultimately, after experimenting with a number of things, I decided that which I cared about most was the Jewish future, and that's where I've devoted myself.
Okay, Eric, I have gotten to know you personally, and I have no reason to say this other than it's my personal experience with you. You are a man of humility, accessibility. You go out of your way to show dignity to everyone you meet. Any meeting I've ever had the privilege of having with you, no matter who I had, young people, etc., you go and you say hello to them, etc. But there's a growing perception that the Republicans are not as compassionate as they ought to be given these challenging times. Now, there do seem to be these conflicting values, even within our Jewish faith, that on the one hand, Judaism is not anti-wealth, it celebrates wealth. There is no history of monasticism, certainly of denial of physical pleasures. The Talmud even says that when a person tries to deny themselves some of the beauty of life and the pleasures of life, God admonishes them, saying, I've given you enough restrictions in the Torah. There's no need to have any more. We believe in wealth because wealth is the engine of charity. But why is there this growing perception? You are the highest ranking Jewish official in American history, and the community celebrates your achievements. But people are questioning this now.
Well, let me first start by saying that we have a very, very tough economic picture right now. It goes without saying. And I don't care if you're individuals in this town who have taken to the streets to exhibit your frustration, or you are a retiree in Sacramento or a working mom in Miami. Things are tough right now because there's not a lot of optimism, and frankly, families do not know what their future will look like from an economic perspective, and the economic security is just not certain. That has to be the number one issue that we focus on collectively as a people. How is it that we are going to restore the optimism that has made this country what it is? The optimism goes hand in hand with people's feeling like they have a fair shot in life. And the fair shot comes from a level playing field. It doesn't necessarily come from guaranteed outcomes conferred by a government. It comes from the ability to know that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you can get ahead. The problem is there's too many examples right now of others, some in this world, having an inside track, having a leg up unfairly. And if you look at the state level, the news is replete with stories of people gaining influence, of corruption that has infiltrated procurement processes in state capitals across the country. If you look at situations of some of the states in this area where you have an incestuous sort of relationship between those who have become close to the halls of power and the politicians that make decisions, and the sort of revolving turnstile that happens. And what you see is those that are creating the wealth are increasingly being taxed to create this sort of game of increased benefits being distributed by those in power. So I think that it's warranted for people to feel in this country they don't have a fair shot. My first depiction of the economy, I think it is warranted to say that there are very needy people out there across this country. We know there are 14 million people unemployed. There are more than 4 million who've been unemployed for at least a year. What are we going to do? Well, Rabbi, you say that somehow it is not compassionate for us as a party, for Republicans, to believe you shouldn't raise taxes right now. Well, first off, the issue of raising taxes cuts right to the heart of the job creation or lack thereof in this country. If you raise taxes, it's counterintuitive to think you're going to have growth. Because if you want to promote entrepreneurial activity, that means you want individuals to begin to take risk again. Raising taxes, taking some of the return or prospects for return away from that individual, raises that price of risk. And so if you want less of something, tax it. So that's why we take that position. Now, how does that relate to helping the needy? In a perfect world, level the playing field for everybody. Everybody has a fair shot at earning their own success. And as you say, even the Torah talks about the fulfillment of self-sufficiency being the utmost goal of dignity. Well, it's not that easy, because there are plenty of people out there who frankly can't help themselves. They need our help. Well, we need to make sure that we're going to have the wherewithal, the resources to address those needs, which is what the majority in Congress has been about since January of this year. We've been about trying to fix the problem. The problem is this federal government of ours is spending entirely much more money than it has. 40% plus of every dollar it spends is borrowed. You can't continue like that. So we have proffered a solution to what is really aggravating the fiscal outlook, which is our entitlement programs. And so we believe, fix the problem, get the wealth creation going again, make sure that wealth is distributed. Michael talked about the fact that we have had a growing disparity of the super wealthy and the rest of us. And it's true. And that's because you don't see job creation for the middle class like you used to in this country. We can put in place policies that will help the middle class. But first things first, we all know that we need to work together on this. And we all know that achievement and success is what's made America a leader. Let's not go and malign others for success right now. Let's try and lend that success to everyone.
Well, let's go deeper into this conversation, because economic policy is obviously dominant in the United States right now. We're going to try to move things along here. First of all, and here I just want you both to comment, it would seem to me that one of the reasons that Judaism as a religion is much smaller and less popular than other world religions. I mean, the Mormons started in the 1820s. They've cut up to us. There's 14 million Mormons. There's a billion Catholics. There's a billion Muslims. Is that Judaism insists on this self-sufficiency through its emphasis on freedom of choice. It's a terrifying religion in many ways. Other religions say you're born in sin, and through certain beliefs you are ultimately saved. The emphasis being that human ingenuity and inventiveness may not be sufficient. This emphasis that your life is not scripted, that it has there's no fate, there's only destiny. Your destination depends on the choices you make, but there's nothing preordained, there's nothing scripted. That's a very terrifying belief for a lot of people. And that would seem to mirror part of this debate, that to feel that you're out there on your own and you're going to either make the right decisions and get a job and prosper, or you're going to fail is kind of scary. And the European socialist model, which I lived under for 11 years in England, is much more about safety nets. It's about if things don't work out, don't worry, we're going to be there for you. It seems a little bit more comfortable, not as scary, but not as adventurous, not as inventive, and not as individualistic. As an American, I felt a little bit stifled in England, very stifled, because I felt that there was this de-emphasis on individualism. And in addition, Maimonides says that the highest form of charity is where you don't give someone a job, money, Michael. It's where you give them a job because you make them self-sufficient and people actually want that. And I want you both to quickly comment on both of those things.
Well, I'm not going to comment quite on that, Shmuley, but particularly as Eric was speaking, the thought occurred to me that while I basically agree, I've been a capitalist all my life, with what Eric is saying, there's a big point that hasn't been mentioned here, and that is that the capitalist system over the last X years, I don't know how many, has really become painfully corrupt, and that those of us who've been engaged in the system have seen so much unfairness, so many people who've done well by not doing well, that there's a sense that the system doesn't quite work anymore. I mean, if you take the banking crisis was really a shanda, but no one was prosecuted. And many of the same people who were responsible for that crisis are there today without any shame. It's a most peculiar phenomenon. So when I hear people speak about the virtues of the capitalist system, capitalism had its up and its down. But what we have prevented, in some sense, is the down. We don't punish. We don't allow bad companies too big to fail to suffer the pain they should have suffered. So we're in this most peculiar circumstance where, yes, I agree with Eric that the government has grown too large, but I wish that were the only issue. And these other issues, for those of us who've been involved in business, sense that there's an uglier, continuous problem that isn't being addressed in the discussions that are held even by Congress. Let me leave this discussion here, and then at some point I want to speak about things Jewish.
All right.
Let me follow up on that, because I could not agree more that corruption is, I think, the necessary or obvious outcome of increasingly centralizing capital and its allocation in your government. Look at the evolving story of Solyndra. Look at the story coming out about that. Look at the bankruptcies surrounding the auto companies in Detroit. Going back to my statement that people don't feel they have a fair shot, when a government begins to go in and take a position in favor of one side or another, setting aside sort of the certainty and transparency of our judicial process, whether it be in reorganization, bankruptcy, or otherwise, there's a problem. Because only the strong, only those who have managed to muscle their way into Congress or the halls of power can make an impact on an allocation of capital and decisions for that. And so that's why I am saying that so much of this sense of unfairness, the ugliness, has started in the government process. If you talk about, Michael, the housing debacle, the banking debacle, look at the regulations, look at what has happened when you have your government going in telling the marketplace, the banks and others what they've got to do. It doesn't work when you have the government coming in picking winners and losers. And what we believe in, it is transparency. So if there are people who have gone unpunished for bad acts, let's punish those bad actors for sure. But let's not insist that the government in Washington can assume that capital is allocated to its most efficient use. Let's not assume that Washington can tell which should be an outcome and which shouldn't. I mean, if you look at it, we've got a choice to make in this country. Come election year, almost a year from now, next month, we're going to have to make a choice as a country. Are we going towards a much more European-style social welfare state in which the government guarantees security and outcome? Or are we going to be the America that most of us think, which is the land where you are the determinant of your outcome? That it is through earning your own success without government telling you where or how. Now, that's not to say that there aren't plenty of reasons why either one has failed. Look at what's going on in Europe. We will become that if we don't get our situation straight. So, I agree, Michael, there is a lot of the system that hasn't worked. But my position would reflect the fact that it is largely due to the intrusion and the increased centralization of power and allocation of capital coming out of Washington instead of true marketplace, free enterprise, sensible regulations, transparent judiciary, and a commitment to the rule of law.
Steve Jobs just passed away, and the New York Times had a story about him about 3 weeks before he died, saying that while he was a phenomenal entrepreneur, he had no record of philanthropy, and he ended Apple's matching charity program as soon as he became CEO after Gil Amelio, I believe it was. And Michael, you have been critical of Warren Buffett on television, on CNBC, for not having given charity until the very sort of the end of his career. You said he didn't give 35 cents, and suddenly 30 odd billion. And part of this whole conversation, and yet Steve Jobs is being mourned by the nation. He's being mourned as a visionary and entrepreneur amidst this lack of philanthropic record because of the products he created, the jobs he created. So a lot of the questions that we're asking about the role of government in taking care of the needy comes down to this question: is it the government's responsibility or is it that of private philanthropy? Now, you're a philanthropist and you're being critical now of some of the corruption on Wall Street. How would you rather see it? Because this is being asked in the President's Jobs Bill now, and whether charitable deductions should be capped, whether they should still be tax deductible. Do you want to see the needy in this nation being taken care of through private philanthropy and faith-based organizations, which seem to be more of the emphasis, the Bush administration, empowering faith-based organizations, or is it more of government's responsibility? I should just add, again, this is in asking for your comment, that Judaism believes greatly in charity. It believes that it is the highest of all mitzvot, the greatest of all commandments. Because every mitzvah that you do, like putting on tefillin or eating kosher, involves a single limb or a single part of your body, the arm, the hand, your gastronomy. But to make money involves every faculty. It's really difficult. So it's sort of a consecration and an elevation of the entire self. How would you like to see it, Michael? Government or philanthropy?
First, let me clear away one Jewish myth. And that is that we are a people of great philanthropy, that we have we do have a great history of ample tzedakah, and we have commented on it in many, many ways. But today, in America, Jews give, as a percentage of their income, no more than the average American. Let me say that again, because it's a striking statement for most people. Jews give, as a percentage of their income, no more than the average American.
This is based on your demographic studies for Brandeis?
This is, no. It was in the philanthropy, the Journal of Philanthropy some time ago. Deeply disappointing statement that we and everyone else loosely give between 2 and 3% of our income philanthropically. And which religious group gives the most?
Mormons, of course.
The Mormons. Of the philanthropy that Jews give, only 15% of it, approximately, goes to Jewish causes. And I guess the UJA would be considered a Jewish cause? Yes? So 85% of Jewish philanthropy goes to universities and museums and hospitals and all those other things. So that's the perspective on Jewish philanthropy in America today, period. But that's not what I was going to talk about, was it? I don't think.
I want to hear Eric's comment on this. Judaism has great emphasis on charity and philanthropy. It's the most important of all mitzvot. Yesterday on Yom Kippur we said that of the three things that ma'avirin et roa hagazera, that avert the evil decree, they are repentance and prayer, but especially charity. So would you like to see these social services provided principally through private initiative and philanthropy, which would mean not capping tax deductible contributions?
I guess it's fairly certain which side I'll come down on. But I will say that there's no question. If the highest mitzvot is for us to give charity, why is it that we should then expect that mitzvot to be fulfilled by our government taking us out of the equation? Of course we want private philanthropy. We want to promote the generosity. And your statement about the president's proposal, I think is one that worthy of discussion. The president has proposed paying for his jobs proposal by capping the ability to itemize your deductions at 28%. And if you're at a 35% income bracket, that takes away significant benefit from a charitable deduction. And I will say, most charities will tell you that they will suffer. Now, we might bemoan the fact that people won't or wouldn't give as much if they didn't get the deduction. So in a way, it's the government certainly putting an incentive in place to be charitable. And it doesn't make any sense to me, though, to pursue what the president's talking about in an economy, especially like the one we've got. Why would you want to make it more difficult or less attractive to give to charity if you need the charities engaged right now? So obviously I'm very much opposed, and there's bipartisan opposition to that proposal. In fact, when the president was first inaugurated, he and his administration proposed this cap before, and it was met with a lot of resistance. Charities did some surveys which indicated 40% of their contributions would be impacted. That means 40% of the contributors are those that are making over the certain amount of income over the 28% bracket. So it doesn't make any sense to me why you would have that kind of policy, especially right now while so many people are in need. But just going back to the larger question of who is more compassionate, which is the more philanthropic, I just think that by centralizing decision-making as to which charity is deserving of largesse with the government, which is loosely, I guess, what you could say, the more you take away from the private sector and put it in the hands of Washington is what happens. I think the less effective and the less reflective of the people's will. We are government that's of the people representing our will. And a bureaucrat in Washington can't make as effective a decision as you can about the charities that you want to see your dollars go to.
At the risk of making what I said before even clearer, Jewish charity has really fallen by the wayside. And you can speak about it from here to forever, but it represents 15% of total Jewish giving, that is to Jewish causes. And it in and of itself has declined a lot. So we can talk about that lump, but that lump is declining relative to most things. And maybe that's what we want, but we should face that fact that Jewish philanthropy is clearly in decline.
Okay, thus far, you may not have noticed, we're actually teaching you Jewish values as we go through this evening. I'm finished with finance. I just want to quickly repeat. Number one, Judaism believes in destiny over fate. Fate means your life is scripted. It's reading the astrological charts. It's not about freedom of choice. We believe you're not a cable car, you're a car, and good things can happen, and if you're not careful, other things can happen. Secondly, we believe in tzedakah and charity, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation because it should be always discussed more and more. I want to move now to something that we often overlook, a very important Jewish value that I think distinguishes Judaism as a world religion. Judaism is the only world religion that endorses the emotion of hatred when directed at the truly wicked and truly evil. In other words, my Christian brothers and sisters tell me that Jesus says that you should love your enemies and you should turn the other cheek. He says that in Luke chapter 6, verse 30. Actually, I always respond to them that Jesus, as a Jew and as a practicing Jew, never said you should love God's enemies. He said you should love your enemies. Your enemy is the man who steals your parking space. God's enemy is the man who slaughters his children, like an Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, or someone who calls for genocide against another people, like Ahmadinejad. And Jesus, of course, would never have said that you should turn the other cheek to grotesque injustices of human carnage. He meant turn the other cheek to a slight, a friend who says something bad about you. But regardless of that debate in Christianity, what is clear, the book of Psalms says it over again. We said it yesterday, Tachlis sina senesim. God, all of your enemies, genocidaires, mass murderers, I have hated them with a complete loathing. Now, given that we have a responsibility to fight bad people, and because the United States, there is a certain chosenness to it that reflects the ancient Jewish concept of chosenness. Are we doing enough? I would like you both to respond, and I'll turn to you first, Eric. Are we doing enough as a nation to hate and fight evil? In other words, I was astonished that China and Russia blocked a condemnation of Syria in the Security Council last week when the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, is slaughtering his people in front of Arab television cameras on Al Jazeera, let alone through any American media organ. Is the Obama administration doing enough? Is the United States doing enough? Did we do enough in Libya? Are we doing enough? There were some Republicans who opposed American action in Libya. Do we have a responsibility to expend resources, treasure to fight bad guys? Or, since we've seen so many innocent Americans who've died in places like Iraq and currently in Afghanistan, the best of the best, our bravest troops, and so much treasure, when the economy is so bad, does the obligation not fall on us that hard? But this is a uniquely Jewish value.
Probably the most effective thing that can be done to counter hatred is to speak with moral clarity, with no uncertainty that it should not and cannot be tolerated. Now, that having been said, let's look at the context of the actions that you speak about in Syria, Libya, and the rest, Egypt, and the so-called eruption in the Arab Spring that occurred last March and is somehow in some way, shape, or form continuing. And in a way, what we Americans, I believe, think and look and see when we see the social revolutions occurring on the streets of Cairo, the protests occurring throughout the region, in the Arab world. What we see, perhaps, is some sparkle of freedom that may actually be taking hold in these very closed societies, in these societies where they do not enjoy human rights protections, where the rights of minorities and of women are not upheld, where there is not freedom of the press, where there is not a certainty of the rule of law. And that somehow we in America look there to see the hope that somehow Jeffersonian democracy will take hold in Cairo next year. That won't happen. And that won't happen so quick because the institutions that uphold democratic values are not in place. They don't have a constitution like we do. They don't have political parties and movements that are upheld, supported, and embraced like we do. So when we see the dictators, the maniacal tyrants in those places being challenged, we want to see freedom overtake them. It is not that straightforward, certainly in the Middle East. And so you are right, we could always be doing more. I would think in the case of Israel, our only ally in the region who is certain in its response to support us in our quest for freedom and the protection of human rights and human progress, even our best ally there is questioning the direction in which we in America are going. That's a problem. That goes back to the lack of clarity coming out of our government in Washington. So, yes, we could be doing more. Yes, we could be standing up and speaking with more certainty and clarity, letting our allies know and our opponents and enemies know where we stand. But I would also just caution to say, promoting democracy is a tough thing in that region especially. And what has happened, I'm fearful, is that there has been a vacuum created, and that vacuum can as easily be filled by the bad guys, if you will, instead of the freedom fighters, the way we would like to see. Inevitably, what we've seen in the past, invariably, has been the radicals can take hold. And so free elections, the way we want, happen just once. Look at what happened in Gaza. We don't want that to happen again. So again, it's a tricky business. It's full of nuance and complexity. I think the best way for us to go forward is to speak out as a people, as a government, a Congress, an executive branch, a president should be speaking out in defense of those groups that protect human rights in Iran, those political movements that are struggling to get up off the ground in Egypt, that stand for what we stand for, that stand for peace with Israel, and that stand for the protection of human progress.
Does that mean that the United States, I remember when George Shultz, as Secretary of State, denied Yasser Arafat a visa to enter the United States to speak at the UN. I'm sure we all remember that time. And I remember when Rudy Giuliani kicked him out of a concert here in New York City because he said he was a terrorist. Should the United States be giving a visa to someone like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who is calling for the extermination of Israel? Because here we are in New York, we who are Jewish residents of the city, and we see every year, this last month, September, opening of the United Nations General Assembly, people like him come. Should we be withdrawing our ambassador from places like Damascus? Even if it doesn't involve expensive treasure and lives, should we be making these statements with strong diplomatic gestures?
I think there's certainly room for improving our standing up for the things that we believe in. There is no question that there are mixed signals coming out of the policies furthered by this administration. Mr. Ahmadinejad is a good example. I think that we have seen there is no reckoning with this man who is nothing but a thug, threatens to annihilate Israel, and frankly threatens our security as well. There is no question we need to take an outwardly tougher stand to send the signal that our allies in the region can count on us to stand up for the protection of freedom and human rights.
And Michael, what about the responsibility of philanthropists? I mean, every year we read about how Columbia is inviting Ahmadinejad to speak, and then 2 months ago, a group of students at Columbia invited Ahmadinejad to have lunch. They canceled at the last minute. You've given a substantial donation to NYU. You've started the Steinhardt School for Education. You are in the educational milieu. You've given substantial contributions to Brandeis University. Should we not see some movement on the part of American Jewish philanthropists, even as some of that philanthropy subsides, to punish educational institutions who seem to make these dictators kosher? Yes, I know that Lee Bollinger introduced him as a common dictator and a thug, but even so, here is a man calling for an annihilation, at least of the Jewish people who live in Israel, which is the same number that Hitler annihilated, and he's given a platform at an Ivy League university in a city that has 2.5 million Jews. Why isn't there a philanthropic protest against these institutions of higher education?
I don't think philanthropists have that voice, number one. Number two, and really more to the point, somehow I find it a little deja vu to hear Jews in a room filled with Jews speaking about Iran and the Arab Spring and all these things that we've all heard so many times before. And here we are speaking to each other, and it really, somehow it seems sort of meaningless to me. And I say that because I've been here once or twice or thrice, but even more to the point, because there's something else going on today. There's a great social protest, greater than any in the history of the state of Israel, going on there. And I don't hear a word in this room about that social protest, about the fact that a relatively few families control virtually the entire economy of the state of Israel, and that is going to become an increasingly painful issue to Israel and to world Jewry writ large. But it doesn't seem to impact you all. It's like Israel is, going to be that happy, idyllic place from here to forever. Well, guess what? It's not. And if we're going to be constructive and really supportive in the deepest sense to the state of Israel, that very small place, we've got to have an understanding of what's going on there. And what's going on there has all sorts of inherent problems in it, somewhat analogous to what's going on here, but in a certain sense, even worse.
Michael, I'm very surprised to hear you say that the philanthropists have no voice. They have the ultimate voice. Without money, these institutions close.
Can you name 10 serious Jewish philanthropists?
So let me give you an example, okay? Let's say you were to go to John Sexton, your very dear friend John Sexton, who's a very special man, president of NYU, and say to him, you know what? I would like NYU to issue a protest against its sister university here in New York, Columbia, issuing an invitation to Ahmadinejad saying that we do not feel that this enhances the education of students. Surely if enough philanthropists got together, we would start seeing presidents of universities who would make that kind of statement. Because all we see is pressure from Palestinian student groups to divest from Israel, but no concomitant pressure to divest from places like Iran and to delegitimize places like Iran.
Well, this may be unpopular, but I'm not sure that I'm not happy that America accepts in its as speakers in its universities of people like the dictator of Iran and other places. I think that's what America has historically been about.
Eric, you were the highest elected Jewish official in American history. You are from Virginia. You speak with that very beautiful Southern accent, which I've always wanted to have one. I guess that means moving to Virginia. And you have a strong evangelical Christian base. You are highly respected by the evangelical community throughout the United States, and they are a very significant and unified voting bloc. And I always tell evangelical Christian leaders with whom I am close, like Pat Robertson, who is just outside your district, I believe. He and I had a very lengthy conversation about this, that it seems to me that if we really want to discuss values, now I'm turning to family values, that abortion and gay marriage have dominated the social debate for about 2 decades now. And yet there's a 50% divorce rate. I am a child of divorce. You're sitting on a panel with 2 children of divorce. Michael's a child of divorce. His parents divorced when he was 1. My parents divorced when I was 8. I have nephews and nieces who are children of divorce. I always believed that a society that has a 50% divorce rate has no right to call itself civilized. So the question is, without touching on the whole controversy of gay marriage and abortion, which I don't want to address tonight, why is it that the political leadership doesn't raise the issue of saving the institution of marriage in the most direct way, which is to save the vast majority of marriages, which of course 95% are heterosexual marriages, and it seems that men and women can't stay in love. I mean, some ideas would be, I wrote a column a few years ago, a tax deduction for marital counseling, for example, that would give people the impetus to go and get the help that they need. But it doesn't seem that divorce ever reaches any kind of significant political conversation. Now, since the very first story in the Bible is about God creating Adam and Eve and the love they shared, and the highest of all Jewish values would be family, and few would disagree with that. Passover can only be celebrated around the family. Look at things like the bris circumcision, which is the first celebration when a child is born, the bar mitzvah, the wedding. Everything revolves around the family. You are the highest elected Jewish official in American history. Would it be possible to bring some of those values so that we have something other than just the conversation about abortion and gay marriage, which seems to have been the dominant theme for the past 2 decades?
Well, first of all, Rabbi, I want to commend you for your efforts in making Friday night family night and all that's done for the Jewish community in this country. I think your question addresses probably a much larger question of faith in America. and the religiosity of America. Because if you think about what makes America exceptional, we are exceptional in many ways. We've referred to the exceptional economic accomplishments of this country, the prosperity we've attained, the technological revolution, the startups, all that we associate with American leadership. But we also are exceptional in that we are a much more religious people, certainly than our older allies in Europe. And the acceptance of faith somehow in America runs much deeper than elsewhere. I think and attribute that to the fact that there never was the imposition of a particular faith on anyone in this country. Rabbi, you've heard me talk about it before. I served in the Virginia legislature before I went to Congress. We're a citizen legislature the way that Jefferson envisioned, and we met for a very short time, and that legislature still does, on odd years, 46 to 45 days a year. And I sat in the chamber of the oldest continuous legislative body in the free world, in the Virginia House of Delegates, and just behind me was Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom, something that's conferred upon us as Jews an incredible blessing. Nowhere else in the history of the world have we been able to function and flourish the way we have here. We were given the right to practice our faith without threat of government imposing its will on us regarding who we should or what we should believe in. And in an interesting twist, because there was no requirement, because there was an ability to pursue one's own faith, we have become a much more religious people. And so when we're thinking about the public discourse today, and we hear about the intolerance cast towards some who are so adherent to their faith that may be different from ours, maybe we ought to think twice about that. Because maybe we ought to look at the divorce rate in faiths such as the Mormon faith, the evangelical movement. Maybe those divorce rates look a little better. Because you're right, it is the values of family. Somehow we've got to, as a society, refocus on the nucleus of the family as a success generator, if you will, for everyone.
You have a comment, Mr. Steinhardt? Otherwise, I have another question for you.
I agree with Eric 100%.
Okay. Eric, you gave a speech at AIPAC that was very compelling. And I felt its idea ought to be repeated. Speaker after speaker came out and said why they support Israel. It's America's most dependable ally. It represents American democratic values in the Middle East. It protects human rights, etc. You got up and gave a speech and said that your support of Israel is based on your values. Now, the highest of all Jewish values is life. And you said that Israel emphasizes the value of life, the life of every one of its citizens. And you said that our Arab brothers and sisters, some of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, have gravitated towards a culture of death, emphasis on martyrdom. And we just had the 10th commemoration of 9/11. That this emphasis on life is missing. I wanted to put the question to both of you. Do you support Israel as a Jewish entity? And Eric, you are Israel's most staunch and stalwart supporter, perhaps ever in the United States Congress. Is it based on the fact that it's a Jewish identity and you're Jewish, both of you, or is it based on this value system, and can you elaborate on it?
I think in the AIPAC speech, I told a story that I think sums up the difference that exists in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors, and certainly would same go for us here in America and those who would agree with Israel's hostile neighbors. That story is one of a Palestinian woman that found herself in a hospital in Beersheba with life-threatening burns all over her body. She was there for some time and received treatment for many, many weeks. Upon completion of the treatment, She was released and invited to come back for follow-up care. And what happened is later she was apprehended at a security checkpoint, loaded with explosives and a suicide belt and other explosives under her clothing. Her intention was to blow up the very clinic that saved her life. Now that's the difference. That is the difference in value system. What kind of culture breeds that kind of behavior? It's hatred. It is hatred so unbridled that one would go to any length to vindicate hatred towards someone else. That's what distinguishes Israel and its neighbors. That's what distinguishes the United States and those terrorists and those people of evil intent. And that's what binds us to Israel. We have a shared value system. We are built upon the notion of a respect for human life. And that's the core of, I think, the bond. Now, you can go beyond that and say, certainly, from a strategic standpoint, there's no one like Israel in the Middle East. It is our one reliable democratic ally, and she remains a pillar of American national security interests, and her security goes hand in hand with ours here in America.
Michael, your love and support of Israel is legend, but for me it's captured in a little story. It's not the fact that you were international chairman of the Israel Museum or Tel Aviv University or Hebrew University or founder of Birthright. It's the fact that you owned a Rembrandt until you heard that Israel didn't have a single Rembrandt, and you quickly gave your Rembrandt to Israel. You can see it hanging. You can see it hanging on the walls of the Israel Museum. Do you do all this because you're Jewish and Israel is Jewish, or does it reflect your personal values? Is it more of a values-based allegiance?
I feel that Israel is the single most significant miracle of the 20th century. But it's a particular miracle. Oh, I'm sorry. Israel's a particular miracle. I define it as a secular Jewish phenomenon. And I use those words, secular Jewish, because that is what has made Israel so special. And I think Israel is really ascending in many ways, while the Jewish community in America, alas, is descending in many ways. So I'm deeply committed to Israel for its values, for its spunk, for its courage. You know, I sometimes think about the Israeli housewife who wakes up in Herzliya Boteach and has 3 kids who are going to go into the army, and a husband who's a technology genius and could easily move to Silicon Valley and never face the military and never have the problems that she will and her family will have in Israel. And it's that commitment, that feeling that goes beyond the religion, because she doesn't care so much about the religion, but she cares about being Jewish, and she cares about the Jewish state that keeps her there. And it's hard to articulate it in clearer terms than that, but it's that sort of feeling that makes me love Israel and makes me go there very often, and wish that I'd made Aliyah a lot of years ago, but I haven't. And
it's not too late.
Maybe. And that's...
You could get your Rembrandt back.
You sure? So...
Michael owns a home in Jerusalem. Okay, my final question to the two of you. There were many more, but obviously time never permits us to do all that we want to do. The tyranny of time. That was probably the dominant theme of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So the tyranny of time. We have to pray for life and make the most of life. We spoke about Jewish values pertaining to charity. I wanted to talk about Jewish values pertaining to learning and education. We'll have to overlook that. We talked about the Jewish value of life. And let me just say, regardless of how the Arabs today might currently embrace the opposite of the value of life, the beauty of Judaism, of course, is its emphasis that every life is equal and of infinite value. We're about to read the Torah from the beginning, and Simchas Torah, here in these synagogues. And the first story of the book of Genesis is that God created every human being in His image. It is the only source that anyone has ever found that articulates the equality of mankind, because the blatant inequality of mankind is what is so self-evident. Some people are smarter than others, some people are taller, I'm kind of short myself, some people are prettier, some people are younger, some people are richer, and yet the Bible says that an Arab life, a Jewish life, a Christian life, a Protestant life, an atheist life, an agnostic life, a Mormon's life is all equal. And yet, amidst all of that, God, some might argue that the most famous description and value of the Jewish people is this ethereal quality. The more powerful, the less it can be expressed in words, of chosenness. That we're chosen for a mission. We're not better than anyone. It's not an elitist concept, but we have a responsibility. So my final question to you, Eric, first, and then to Michael is this. The United States has always been seen itself, and you articulated it very eloquently before about faith in America, Eric. The United States has always seen itself in very spiritual terms. The great British historian Paul Johnson, who's had a lifelong love affair with the American people and wrote the history of the American people, says that everything about America is couched in spiritual terminology, manifest destiny, and God we trust imprinted in our money. He even says it's the way we market Coca-Cola, like it's the real thing. And he says that's one of the reasons for its success, its spiritual belief in itself. So my final question is this. Is America chosen? And if so, what for? And just before you answer the question, to give you just a moment, I do a lot of marital counseling. And I hear so many wives say to their husbands these days, in the middle of marital counseling, she'll turn to him and say, after he defends himself, you just don't get it. I hear that's the main complaint. You just don't get it. And when he asks, what don't I get? I always say to him, what you don't get is that what every woman wants isn't to be loved. If she wanted to be loved, she would stay with her parents. Her parents love her. Her parents aren't going to divorce her. You might, but they won't. She left home because the one thing her parents could not do for her was choose her. To choose someone is to make them feel infinitely special. It's to distinguish them. It's to make them feel unique. When we speak about American exceptionalism, surely it means that we're chosen for something. And I think that's what Americans are grappling with right now. So having said all that, let me come back to the question. The final question that I will put to the House Majority Leader of the United States, House of Representatives, one of the most influential and powerful people in the country, who has given us a lot of his time today, and we're very grateful, Eric. You're a man of incredible humility, and truly I'm so grateful for how much time you and Diana have both given to us today, and I hope that God richly rewards you with everything that you're trying to do for our country because of how committed you are to so many people. Is America chosen, and if so, for what?
I do believe in American exceptionalism, without a doubt. I know others have said, well, sure, America's exceptional to Americans, just like Great Britain is exceptional to the British, like France is exceptional to the French. I think we're different. I think we're different because of the origin of this nation and how we came about. It was in the realm of the fact that we were unabashedly empowering our government by the people, and that the government is in place to ensure the protection of us as a country. Certain powers are given to our federal government, but yet the Bill of Rights is in place to ensure the rights of individuals. We speak of in America the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness through the exercise of the God-given freedom that we have. And that is a very unique perspective in the world. And so, if you ask Rabbi, are we unique, are we chosen, are we exceptional, and for what? I believe, and Michael mentioned the word earlier in the day, I believe we are chosen for achievement. I believe that we can out and overachieve anyone because of our exceptionalism. And given what's going on today, it is, I think, behooves us all to recognize achievement and success is a good thing. We just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to go about achieving and earning that success. And so instead of pitting, I see there's some of the elected leaders in Washington that are looking at what's going on and actually prodding and supporting, the kind of divisiveness, pitting Americans against Americans. I would ask the fellow elected leaders in Congress and elsewhere to say it's time for us to really focus on how we minimize the divide and come together as one, as Americans, to solve this problem.
I agree with Eric that the Jews certainly, and perhaps America as well, have been the product of great achievement. But I do not believe that either America or the Jews are chosen. Neither.
Congressman Cantor and Michael, do you trust President Obama on Israel?
I just have questions that have arisen about the direction this president and his administration are going as far as the U.S.-Israel relationship, and that's why I'm a fervent supporter and participate in a bipartisan coalition on Capitol Hill that is aimed at continuing to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship for the region.
A quotation that you gave to the press was in the New York Times when you became House Majority Leader, that you said that the Republican House would serve as a check on President Obama's pressure on Israel.
Well, look, there have been policies that have come out of the White House that I disagree with as far as how our U.S. security interests are ensured and furthered by pressuring Israel on issues having to do with construction in Jerusalem. The issue of legitimacy, of mutual recognition, as far as the Palestinians are concerned, and their view of the Jewish state. And furthermore, I believe that the focus should be, and we should not lose sight of the fact that Iran is still there, posing an existential threat to the state of Israel, and in fact, ultimately, to the United States.
300,000 people have gone to Israel with Birthright. How do you measure the success when they come back? You and I share a passion. You don't share the same passion for the Jewish religion, but you do share a passion for Jewish values. You want people to lead Jewish lives. You want them to have a Jewish identity. How do you measure whether that is being successful, whether Birthright is instilling that identity within its alumni?
Well, we measure it a lot of different ways. One of the ways that people take considerable comfort from is the fact that, for instance, we have done a study using alumni from the year 2004, and we took a whole group of young people who applied in 2004 to Birthright. Many went, some never got off the waiting list, but they should be basically identical except for that fact. Those who went on the trip, about 74% married Jews. Those who never got off the waiting list, 44% married Jews. So it's an extraordinary difference based upon a 10-day trip. Marrying Jews is not the be-all and end-all, but it does show that the trip does have its impact. But it has a long way to go in terms of making deeply knowledgeable Jews, which is my ultimate goal. And again, understanding that most of the kids who come from the United States are products of Hebrew schools, which is one of the most horrible institutions ever formed in the United States.
Oh, but Michael, but in light of that, since Birthright is a free trip and you're complaining that Jewish philanthropy is down, why is it that nothing is asked of the Birthright alum in return? We gave you 10 free days, give 1 day back to a Jewish charity when you get home, or just something like that. Not even money, just something that would, in fact, I would ask Eric the same question about national service. Israel is a model of, our daughter made Aliyah. She's going to the IDF for 2 years, God willing. She didn't have to, but she felt that she should. A lot of people are saying that the United States is breeding a culture of narcissism among its youth, where you wake up in the morning and you tell the whole world the cornflakes you had for breakfast on Facebook, you become the center of your own universe. Why not ask for something in return if you're concerned about the decline in Jewish giving?
When we initiated the idea, the sense we had was that the image of Jewish philanthropy in the hearts and minds of most American young people was appallingly poor. And if we made it a trip where we asked for something in return, it would be another Jewish discount. And we didn't want another Jewish discount. We wanted a totally free trip, number one. When they return after a few years, we do ask them to consider contributing. But that's all we do. And again, they're still in their mid to late 20s when that happens. So there's ample time, and in that period, they're usually not in a position to give very much anyway.
Okay. I just want it noted for the record that Michael Steinhardt said something extremely positive tonight about the Jewish future because of Birthright, and I have now a vision of hope for the Jewish people, God willing, and it's all going to turn out well. Eric, you wanted to say something? Your 2 kids went on Birthright.
Yeah, I just want to just say to Michael, if you're looking at success, Diane and I have to look no further than our 2 oldest who have been through graduating from Birthright, one at the University of Virginia, the other at the University of Michigan. Both came home seeking more. And if the goal is to produce knowledgeable Jews about the values of our people and our faith, I think you hit a home run with mine too.
Eric, and then Michael. Question about the media that's here, and I just want to add a Jewish value to it. If you look at the Al-Khaitz, the penitential prayer, the confessional prayer that we all banged our chests to in synagogues around the world yesterday, about half of them concern themselves with slander, libel, malicious talk, lashon hara, gossip. What is the state of the media today, and how does it influence public opinion? And are good people refraining from going into politics because they think that the microscope of the media is going to make it impossible for anyone to survive it?
I don't think there's any question that the operation of the media in this country has enjoyed its full potential. And certainly, I think self-professed media is overwhelmingly to the left. I think, in reading the confessional that we went through yesterday, it did talk a lot about sort of callousness and the hurting of other people. Somehow, the rules of decency somehow in some quarters of the media are missing. But if that's the price we have to pay for an open and free society, so be it.
Do you see more Jews becoming Republican in the near future? All of us here in New York witnessed New York 9 going Republican. This is very interesting because Eric is the leader of all the Republicans in the House, and Michael is the founding chairman of the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, and was very involved in initially the campaign of President Bill Clinton. So we'll ask you both to answer that, and then we'll do a closing statement.
I think right now, Rabbi, the problems in this country are so deep. People are looking for answers. They're looking to see what's best for America. If Republicans succeed, that means we've gotten our message across, that the policies we're advocating, that the solutions that we're behind will bode well for the future of America. What's good for America will be good for our party.
But I do think that Jews are slowly moving to the right. And on balance, I think that's probably a good thing. But it's not of major concern to me. A major concern to me is the future of the non-Orthodox diaspora in America. Where are we going? I mean, the religious movements seem to be fading. Most of us, I think, don't deeply care about them. Most of us have a really attenuated Judaism. And that really concerns me, that our Jewishness isn't the same as our parents' or our grandparents' Judaism. And there's nothing I see in the contemporary world that is suggestive of any revival. And that is, if I had to pick one thing that I think about a great deal and I don't have a solution to, is where is the revival? Why are your children going to be more Jewish than you are? And I don't see an answer to that.
I'm going to ask each speaker to give a 1-minute closing statement, and then I'll give a closing statement, and you can all go home. Eric, please.
Just want to thank you very much for this very robust discussion, for your coming tonight, and we all look with some optimism towards the future, remembering that we are all here together and trying to find common ground and work towards solutions. So thank you very much.
Michael?
I share that hope. I too thank you for coming tonight, and I have this real problem that I really love Jews. As miserable as we are, I really love Jews. So thank you very much.
I want to share with you as we conclude a beautiful metaphor from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi. He said that a bird has 2 wings, and you would expect that it would need only 1 wing to fly, or even if it had 2, it could be on the same side, but that would only cause it to flop on its belly over and over again. It would never move forward, it would never fly, it would never have forward propulsion. It is specifically the antithetical propulsion of a right wing and a left wing pushing against each other in opposite directions that causes it to move forward. We don't want a country of only Republicans or only Democrats. That's what they have in China. That's what they increasingly have in Russia. We want a robust dialogue between both sides. That means mutual respect. At all of our dialogues, we expect our speakers, and we demand and we will insist that our speakers be respected, because that's the beauty of living in the United States. If you are a Jew, you should be honored to live in this incredible nation. Nowhere on earth have the Jews ever prospered or flourished more than in the United States of America. This is the fairest, most, I don't even like the word tolerant, because to tolerate someone means to stomach them. It is the fairest, most compassionate and generous country on earth. And we need antithetical propulsion. Eric has brought a robustness to the Republican Party that many admire, and for those who criticize it, God bless you, you're an American. But Eric, I personally want to extend my deep thanks to you and Diana for giving an entire day of your life to us. And I want you to know that regardless of the politics, because we can always agree or disagree on politics, that as a proud and committed Jew, you have brought phenomenal joy and pride to the American Jewish community. You are the talk of people's lips. The community celebrates your achievements, and especially the fact that you so proudly affirm your identity. You are a marvelous example to young Jews everywhere. Let them be great Democrats. Let them contribute in the field of the arts or in commerce, but let them do so as you do as a proud Jew raising a Jewish family, and God bless you. And finally, to Michael Steinhardt. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had the great honor and privilege of knowing Michael for 16 years. And Michael does have an unparalleled love for the Jewish people, because amid his, you know that the Talmud says that you learn the most not from your fans but from your critics. So whatever criticism he offers, Michael has always put his money where his mouth is. You are speaking about a man that has given an extremely significant portion of his wealth to the Jewish people in the most literal sense, and has started a program that has taken 300,000 young Jews to Israel. And let me conclude by saying, our organization is about one thing and one thing only: bringing Jewish values to the culture. How do we get more discussions like these in live audiences or on television, on radio? How do we train more of you to be exponents of Jewish values? How do we get young Jews not just to study in yeshivas and day schools and seminaries, but to give them the media facilities, to give them the communication skills, to get out there and be exponents of Judaism? We are not better than any other nation, and we are not worse. We need more spokesmen. Israel needs more spokesmen. The American Jewish community needs more spokesmen. So we launched GIVE, the Global Institute for Values Education, with a specific view and emphasis of taking just, even if we start with 30 young people a year who we train in 5 quintessential Jewish values and give you the media training, to write a play based on Jewish values, to write a television, what we call a television treatment based on Jewish values, a movie script based on Jewish values, a website based on Jewish values, a book proposal based on Jewish values. There was a woman named Wendy Mogul who had no affiliation with the Jewish community, or little affiliation. She wasn't even a member of a Reform synagogue, and she was a child psychologist who felt stymied in healing children. And she decided, you know what, maybe let me see what my own religion has to say about it. She paid a Reform rabbi to teach her what the Talmud said about child rearing. This is a woman who was not a member of even a Reform or Reconstructionist synagogue, let alone Orthodox or conservative. And she published a book based on her findings called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. It is the Bible of child rearing in America today. It is the single most respected book on child rearing. So in that, shameless self-promotion, ladies and gentlemen, but it's all based on Jewish values, okay? This is my newest book. It came out last week. It's called 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Yourself. It's the 10 most important Jewish values, how you instill them within yourself. And the second is called Kosher Jesus. This will be out in December, God willing. It took me 8 years to write it. And it serves as a theological bridge between Jews and Christians, because like Eric, I believe that evangelical Christians have emerged as our very best friends and stalwart supporters of the State of Israel. So these are gifts. God bless you all. Thank you very much.